morning. And it's a beautiful morning in New York City today. Nice, cool. It's almost unfortunate that we can't all be happy, go about our business, have a lovely day, know everyone's employed, know that our kids are getting the best education possible. Healthcare is right up there with the South Koreans and everyone else in this world that produces great healthcare. Our infrastructure is equal to China's, where trains crisscross our nation and bring people to long distances in a speedy method, just like I experienced when I was on the Channel from London to Paris. Unfortunately, the GOP, which used to be the party of no, now has become the party of hate. And I'm afraid too many people in this country are hating each other and doing tremendous damage to fellow Americans. Let's look at what the GOP stands for. It stands for book banning. Yet we know that when you get a college education, your salary increases 66%. Why ban books? Why make it so that people don't understand what they're reading, what's happening in America, and can't have educated choices when it comes to choosing a political party? If you go with the GOP, you're going with a party that doesn't want good education for all. They're banning books, just like they did during the Cultural Revolution in China, just like Hitler did. This is not a good society. It's not a society to bring up well-educated, well-informed students. And worse, the gun lobbyists and the GOP have a lock on legislation that would keep Americans safe. At this point in time, I used to be for only the ban on AR-15s. But I now think that people who hate other people shouldn't have any guns either. If you've got hatred in your heart and you use it to shoot people who come on your property only because you don't know who they are, your reflexive instinct, if you're scared, is call 911. Get a policeman there. But don't shoot unarmed kids just because they made a mistake. I remember when my guys, and I was in the flooring business and they worked for me, and they used to say, don't forget, call the house that's occupied to let them know we're on our way. But in those days, they weren't afraid of being shot. They just didn't want to see naked bodies running around the apartment. So they wanted to be forewarned. And they wanted also to have clear access to the property. But I digress. So we got book bans, we got gun violence. How many massacres do we need a day for Congress to take action? Sure, I know that at least 10 GOP members of Congress get between 500,000 to 250,000 from the gun manufacturers and lobbyists. But enough's enough. How much money do you need to actually care a little about your fellow Americans? There was a time when the GOP was proud, really proud, to go around quoting the Constitution and trying to do what's right. Now they've got an extreme ideology. So They don't like education for everyone. They prefer it that people in America have low reading scores. They don't want to ban guns, though we're dying at a rate that's unheard of. Yeah, they come to New York City and they say, oh, we got a big crime rate. But actually, for a city of 10 million folks, 1 or 2 people get shot. It's a tragedy. But our murder rates are very, very low. What else are they banning? They're against infrastructure. They're not using the $200 billion that's at their disposal to create better roads and more jobs for their people. No, they're just hanging on to the money, hoping the country goes into recession. So I ask you, what's good to know about the GOP? Why would you vote for them? You think those billionaires are going to share with you? We've shown time and time again that never happens. There is no trickle-down economy. The only way Congress acts is if when people band together across the nation and they vote for labor and they vote for better wages and they vote for access to the polls. And if your congressman doesn't do it, well, by golly, go after a ballot measure. Start putting in people who are your community activists, your scientists, your folks who are literate in computers, people in the humanities, because we need to shape policy in America that has a heart, that cares about all Americans and any other person who happens to be in this country. It's not right that migrant kids are working and getting hurt. So, what does the GOP stand for now? Besides book banning, besides gun violence, besides hatred and anti-Semitism and racism and neo-Nazis that they support? Where else have they gone? Reproductive rights. We fought that battle in the 60s. In the 60s, there were women who harmed themselves with hangers. Could never have children again, most of them. And now we have a pill that is around in 90 countries, has been used for over 23 years, and the Supreme Court is debating whether or not American citizens should have access to this pill. It's a no-brainer. Nobody curtails Viagra. Why in the world would you curtail a medication for women? And women didn't get into this predicament on their own. They had a partner, a male partner. So when you're criminalizing folks because somebody gets pregnant and then wants an abortion because they can't afford that child, well, maybe you should put 2 people in jail, not just 1. Shame on the GOP. I can't find one reason to recommend anyone. And then Donald Trump is indicted. Well, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing when you break the law. Clarence Thomas may be indicted too. He broke the law. Fox News was indicted also. And unfortunately, they've settled for a little under $1 billion. And now all the lies that they knew to exist and perpetuated so that they could make more money on their channels and not alienate their constituency, they're not going to have to fess up in court about all their lies. Well, I certainly hope somebody publishes a book to reveal that Trump really did commit crimes, that Fox really did know that the 2020 election wasn't stolen, but let it go out anyway. And what else does the GOP stand for besides lying and hatred and fomenting misinformation about COVID, misinformation about the environment? You now see the environment, folks, right? You got tornadoes where we never had tornadoes. New York City had 89-degree weather last week for 2 days. The floods are coming in the upper regions of the states. The extremes are everywhere, and they're duplicated globally. And this was supposed to be our cooling off period. Some cooling off period. Well, we're down to the 50s and 60s in New York City. But who knows what's going to happen this summer if we already soar 89 degrees. And at the end of the year, we're going into El Nino, which is the hotter climates, the hotter weather. So our country has a lot to do. It's change on many levels at the same time. We need change now. It's not right that all of these IT companies are letting go tens of thousands of people at one time. If you can afford to hire 22,000 people because you got them on cheap labor, then you know what? You shouldn't have hired them to begin with if they're like temporary labor to you. You should hire quality individuals so America is finally producing quality products once again. I'm not proud of our monopolies. That's another thing the GOP stands for. And perhaps maybe some Democrats too, because it's everyone's policy since Teddy Roosevelt to encourage zero competition. So what do I see? I see a GOP that should be avoided at every cost. Whether they're controlling our vote, gerrymandering our states, banning books, refusing to get rid of the fossil fuel industry, and not embracing renewables, not providing good education for people, not giving them excellent Medicare or expanded Medicaid, and not giving unemployment insurance. I know too many people from their 30s to their 50s who should be earning good money, and they're out of work. Everyone should be banding together in a freelancers' strike. And when one corporation goes on strike, everyone should go on strike in support, just like they do in England. You don't like the policies, you strike for better wages. And you form unions if you're in corporations. I never was a strong union person. I am now, because people are not getting a living wage. So, GOP, thumbs down. I don't really see anyone that I like to recommend them. Nobody. They're too engrossed in making a bloody fortune off of the lobbyists. We're not their constituents. The corporations are, and the corporations dictate how our society runs. And if billing collectors are any reflection of our society, or HR bots or wherever AI is being used. It's kind of dehumanizing. It's time to use America and Americans to man all those jobs that determine what happens to our lives, whether it's getting a job, whether it's paying a bill, whether it's developing new data for society. We need to be able to work hand in hand with AI, but they should not supplant the human being. And that's what's happening in this country. And I'm being told it's not personal. Well, it is personal when you're affected. If you can't get a job because a bot determines whether or not you have the right criteria, or if you're being done for medical billing and they don't even know that you've spoken with a human representative, there are glitches in our system galore. And that doesn't even touch on the latest glitch, which is the glitch of what happened with that 21-year-old National Guardsman who had access to America's top secrets. Makes you wonder, where was the chain of command and why wasn't he stopped? There's a lot to be said about the GOP, and none of it is good. Think twice before you put any one of them in office. They don't stand with us or for every American. They support a very, very narrow spectrum of extremists. And one thing we don't need is an autocratic society run by extremists in this country. Stand up for democracy, vote out the GOP en masse, and let's start putting decent people into government at the local, state, and federal level. Don't confuse capitalism with democracy. It's very, very different. I've seen capitalism with a heart. I've seen progressive income tax, and I've seen living wages from corporate America. I think we got to go back to the old values again. And you're not going to do it with today's GOP.